veterans of the elite naval special forces of the Soviet Navy, who had dedicated their youth to serving their country, gathered for a reunion at the old shashliknaya. Suddenly, a group of burly thugs burst in. Drunk, they began to bully the veterans, mocking them and calling them old men. But these men had spent half their lives training and weren't about to back down before some street thugs. It was Friday evening. As the spring warmth was still giving way to the cool of the night, on the outskirts of Moscow, atop a small hill, stood the shashliknaya, an old friend, its dimly lit sign. Neon letters flickered faintly on the shabby cement wall, and the smell of fried meat, onions, and smoke wafted through the old sliding door. In the center of the room, in a space formed by two connected rooms, sat a communal table. That evening, 5 elderly men sat around a long table, over which shashlik was grilling on several grills: Pavel Dmitrievich, Ivan Yegorovich, Grigory Konstantinovich, Yuri Antonovich, and Mikhail Semyonovich. All were over 60, their strong necks and broad shoulders, even under their loose shirts, betrayed the former physique of Special Forces soldiers, which the years had not erased. However, their expressions were the same as those of ordinary old men who had long ago abandoned the battlefield for the cares of life. Instead of camouflage, they wore comfortable trousers, which, they said, their granddaughters had chosen, and shirts their wives had packed for the trip. They were already finishing their second bottle of vodka, reminiscing about the past. "Oh, Yegorich, I thought I'd definitely suffocate underwater," said Pavel, turning over a skewer of meat. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have seen this world in my old age." Ivan laughed quietly. "We all thought it was the end then. But you know, now I think that operation was a waste of time. In the end, the one who survived was right." A chuckle rippled across the table, and the meat on the grill sizzled, dripping with juice. Grigory, sprinkling the meat with salt, added, "If the one who survived was right, then I'm the one in charge today. My face is the most worn out. Quote, you son of a..." Pavel lightly tapped the empty bottle with his skewer. And Mikhail, laughing, began to cough. As a former military doctor, he immediately pulled some digestive pills from his pocket and grumbled, "Eat more slowly, old men, you have to think about your blood pressure too." Yuri, meanwhile, poured everyone a shot of vodka. When the glasses touched, there was a distinctive clinking sound. For a moment, their gazes met. It was a short ritual, developed back in the days when gunshots rang out instead of glasses. At that very moment, the sliding door slammed open. The air in the kebab shop, thick with the smell of meat and vodka, mixed with the cold night air from the street, and for a moment, silence reigned. 4 burly men stumbled into the room. The bald-headed leader had a blue tattoo running from his forehead to the back of his head. His 3 companions sported thick gold chains and shiny t-shirts, as if boasting their gang affiliation. "Hey, mistress!" The tattooed man slammed his fist on the glass display case. The thin woman shuddered in fear. "I have a free one, the biggest one." "Forgive me, it's all taken now," he said, "free it." While the woman bowed slightly and apologized, he cast a disdainful glance around the room. Noticing the table where Pavel and his friends were sitting, he grinned wryly. "Oh, look, the old men are having a feast here." Quote, his tone was thick with undisguised mockery and hostility. One of his gloved henchmen grabbed their barbecue and pretended to throw it on the floor. Pavel's friends froze, lowering their forks. No one had yet shown anger, but all 5 had already mentally calculated the bandits' trajectory, the position of their hands, the distance between their legs, and the route to the exit. This look, however, was hidden from outsiders. It was a mask of combative calm, honed since youth in countless, deadly situations. From the outside, it seemed the old men were simply frozen by the sudden commotion. But deep down, each of them was already ready for battle. The tattooed man, pushing through the smoke-filled air, approached their table. "Hey, old men, can't you hear? You're making too much noise. Let's keep it down." And his henchmen, standing behind him, demonstratively showed off the tattoos on their arms and grinned. One of them was already searching the kitchen for a knife. "Pavel, I haven't yet estimated how many there are," Ivan muttered quietly, carefully putting down his fork. Pavel, picking up his shot glass, only smiled vaguely. "What difference does it make? There are 4 inside, and even if there's a support group outside, there can't be more than 10. Meanwhile, Yuri, surprisingly quietly but clearly, wrote something on a napkin. "The exit is blocked. Perhaps knives. Police 1123 minutes." Then he discreetly moved the napkin to Ivan. A habit developed in intelligence. In a critical situation, a word replaces a letter. The tattooed man, looking into Pavel's clouded yet clear eyes, felt an inexplicable unease. He was sure these were simple village elders, but their coppery, unwavering gaze was disconcerting. Trying to shake off this unpleasant feeling, he raised his voice again. "Are you kidding me, guys? I asked you nicely." Quote. He grabbed Pavel's shot glass of vodka and slammed his fist down on the table. The vodka splashed onto the hot coals, and for a moment the flames that flared up illuminated everything around. At that moment, Pavel grabbed the tattooed man's wrist with his rough, old hand. Not grabbed it, more like snagged it. He only pressed lightly with 2 or 3 fingers, but the bandit jerked like a fish caught on a steel hook. "Young man, we're the first ones here." Pavel's voice was low but clear, and it carried a strange, almost military bearing. The tattooed man reflexively tried to pull his hand away, but the tendons from his fingertips to his elbow were completely blocked by Pavel's grip. His eyes widened, and he involuntarily swallowed a curse. At that moment, Ivan, flipping a piece of shashlik, said as if nothing had happened, "Pash, the meat is burning." The atmosphere in the kebab shop grew tense. The smell of roasting meat mingled with the scent of anxious sweat and the creaking of metal. One of the bandits, grabbing a knife from the kitchen, moved toward them, but was met with Grigory's icy gaze. Grigory slowly stood up and stretched his shoulders. The movement alone made his neck crack, as if he had a hernia. But the threat emanating from his back was sharper than any blade. "Put the knife down," Mikhail snapped. Even though he was a medic, he knew better than anyone that the last stage of a fight was always dealing with the wounded. "If you swing it, I'll have to draw a suture line along your artery. Frankly, I don't feel like smelling blood today." The knife-wielding bandit froze at these words, which conjured up images of torn flesh. At that moment, Ivan slightly lifted the grill grate. The coals flared brightly under the red-hot metal. Ivan's gaze slid from the coals to the knife-wielding bandit, and then to their leader, whose wrist was still in Pavel's hand. It was like the prelude to a slow symphony. At that moment, when the air seemed about to explode, filled with a strange, sublime silence instead of fear, Pavel abruptly twisted the bandit's wrist silently in one motion. The tattooed man's eyes rolled back, as if he was falling into an abyss. The pain from the dislocated bone pierced his nerves. Before he could even scream, Pavel took a step back and threw him onto a nearby empty table. At the same time, Yuri pressed the call button on the phone, which already had 911 dialed. The kebab shop is an old friend of the attack. There's a man with a knife and victims. His voice was calm, but it cut like a samurai sword. 3 henchmen rushed forward simultaneously. Grigory, lowering the grill grate, put his right foot forward, and Ivan, slightly raising his hands above the coals, assumed a fighting stance. Even Mikhail picked up an empty bottle and glanced toward the exit. A second passed, maybe 2. Time stood still, and the air turned into a firework fuse. The small bell above the door tinkled softly.